Hello everyone, this is Brahma Zimco Survival and I'm back again. Yeah, back again. There we go. This is a new gizmo I found on Amazon. Now, I am a huge fan of Opinel. It's a knife manufacturer. Opinel still makes the oldest style folding knife, which is essentially known as an Opinel knife. But basically it's one of the twist lock folding knives. It's been around since the Civil War. One of the oldest designs, and in my opinion, still the most reliable as far as heavy use goes. The locking mechanism is just solid. There is no way you're going to fold it up on you unless you try to fold it up on you. So in my opinion, if you're getting an outdoors knife, it should be an Opinel, an outdoors folding knife. But keep in mind that any folding knife is not a survival knife. I don't care how the company tries to sell it to you. I don't care how fancy they try to make it. This is no exception. There is no such thing as a folding survival knife. They simply are not capable of doing what you need them to do in a survival situation in any serious way. So, with that said, Opinel goes modern. Basically, Opinel's, if you haven't seen it already, go ahead and take a look at my Opinel number 15 video. That will give you an idea of what a traditional Opinel looks like. Well, that is a traditional Opinel. But this is the new version. I believe these have been out for about a year now. I didn't even know they were out, which is terrible. If I knew they had been released, I would have bought one when they came out and done a review for you guys. But I didn't even know it because this thing on Amazon is hidden under 3 or 4 different subcategories. I had to actually bounce from item to item to item and look in the suggested items category for each one before I was able to find this thing. It was like 3 or 4 subcategories in. And they have very few reviews because very few people have found them. So I will leave a Amazon affiliate link in the description for you guys so that if you guys want one, you can just click on the link and go right to the page. They are expensive. I'm going to be right off the bat with that at the very beginning of the video. They're 50 bucks. Is it worth it or not? You can decide at the end of the video. I'm not going to tell you one way or the other. Because this is going to be very specific to a very specific group of people. In my opinion, it is not a knife for everybody. It is a knife for some people, and some people will like it. I'm one of the people that likes it. Some people will hate it. So you will have to decide for yourself whether or not this is the kind of knife that you want to look at getting for your purposes. Now, let's go ahead and get into the actual review here. This knife itself is about 6 inches long folded. It is an Opinel number 12 blade, so its blade is almost 4 inches long. 3.9 I believe it is. It has a polymer plastic material with a rubberized coating. This orange here is rubberized. Think Mora's. The locking mechanism is beefed up on this one because, again, it is designed specifically for outdoor use. So the locking mechanism, if you look at it here, is quite a bit chunkier than the locking mechanism on a normal Opinel. However, it works exactly the same way. You spin it until it lines up, pull the knife out, turn it to lock it. Once it's locked, the knife is completely stable. It cannot be folded up. And the only way to fold it is to physically turn this back to line it up, then it will fold. It does lock closed. Let's see if I can show it to you guys here. Come on. You see that little cutout right there? If you fold that, if you turn that, come on, turn. There we go. It will lock, and in the lock position, it cannot open more than this much. So there you go. And in case you guys are wondering, the friction on this is actually supposed to be that way. It is supposed to be a tight friction to prevent it from opening up on you accidentally or spinning while you have it clipped to a backpack, because this does have a carabiner clip point right here. Now, let me go through all the features of this knife, and then I'll get into my opinions of it. This knife is pretty unique as far as survival knives go. So let's go ahead and kind of delve into it a little bit. This is made by Opinel, as I've stated. Let me see if I can show it to you guys here. See if I can show you guys the logo. Come on, focus. There you go. It is made in France. This is not a Chinese knife. It is made in France, which is probably why the price is so high on it. Those of you guys who own Moras will appreciate the steel of this knife. It is a 12C27 stainless steel. It is sandvick stainless steel. So if you guys have a Mora, this knife is going to perform exactly the same. You already know what the steel is going to be like, because this steel is exactly the same as a Mora stainless steel, which I really like, because I like Mora stainless. I like the sandvick. So when I found out this thing was sandvick, I was like, okay, perfect. At least the steel is something that I'm going to like. The grind on it is a full flat grind. It does have a fairly, I mean, the angle on this thing almost looked, the secondary bevel here, the angle on it almost looked like it was a true Scandi to me. When I first got it in, I thought it was true Scandi. I could not tell the difference. It was finished so well. I could not see any grind marks on it. When I went and tried to do the shimmer test on it, I couldn't even see the bevel line. Let me show you guys what I mean here. Do you see? You can just barely make it out. But in real life, when you're looking at it, you can't really catch that glimmer along the edge. It wasn't until I managed to catch the light just right that I was able to see that grind along the edge. And it was shiny. I mean, it was not a bit of scratching to it. As you can see, this knife is polished. It is absolutely perfectly finished. Now, I've used this knife quite a bit because I always test things before I review them. So it's got dirt on it now, but when I got it in, it was perfectly finished. It was hair popping sharp right out of the box. I had absolutely no complaints about it whatsoever. It came as sharp or sharper than most of my Moras. It does have a squared spine. All Opinels do, so it was not a surprise to me, but this one here is squared, very nicely squared. It's going to be equal to a squared off Mora as far as, you know, how sharp that spine is. It strikes a ferro rod very, very well. Those of you guys who do own Opinels will notice the blade is very different than a normal Opinel. It is much wider and is much thicker, or at least in my opinion, thicker than normal Opinels, because this whole knife has been beefed up for the purposes of survival. Now, the one thing that I do like about this versus an Opinel in the woods, a normal one, is normal Opinels, if they get wet because their handles are wood, they will seal themselves shut or open. Whatever direction that blade was sitting when that handle got soaked is the way that knife is going to stay for a few days, because that wood swells up and then the knife can't move. This one, being a plastic and polymer handle, makes it weatherproof. You know, everything, all the metal on here is sandvick stainless, including this piece, and the handle itself being polymer. This thing can get as wet as you want to make it, and it's not going to harm the usefulness of the knife. So, in my opinion, it makes it a very good all-weather knife. Now that I've gotten that out of the way, we can move on to some of the other features. There are 3 features on the handle here, and this portion of the handle is what is going to make or break your decision on whether to buy this knife. If it didn't have this right here, if all it had was this portion of the knife, it would be a no-brainer to me. But this portion of the knife is what's going to make or break the decision. So let's start out with that. Number 1, I'm going to start with the whistle. I am going to blow it. It is very loud. They claim that it is 110 decibels, and I do not doubt that whatsoever. It is the only gimmick whistle that actually functions the way it's supposed to. So let me go ahead and blow it. If you guys don't want to hear it, turn your volume down. I'm going to use my fingers to let you know when I'm going to blow it. So when I get to 1, turn your volume off. Yeah. I didn't even blow into that very hard. So you can hear, I have no doubt that you can hear this thing from quite a ways away. This is an actual working gimmick survival whistle. And yes, I say gimmick because any whistle built into the... We're good. Well, go on, you can close your window now. I'm sorry, my neighbor came out. Want to know what was wrong? Any whistle built into a handle, I consider a gimmick whistle. That's just my opinion on the matter. Typically, when you get a whistle like this built into something, it's not known for being particularly good quality. And this one actually, as you heard, and as my neighbor heard, does work quite well. So I have no problems with this whistle right here whatsoever. I think Opinel makes one without this piece and without this piece, with just the whistle. If so, I'll try to track it down, and I will go ahead and put a link to this one as well, or to that one as well, because this is their deluxe model. It has all the different survival features on it. But I'll see if I can find a more stripped down version and be able to post a link to you guys for that. Now, this right here acts as kind of a dual purpose. Its design is to basically allow you to connect a lanyard / carabiner. It's big enough that you can clip it directly to a carabiner. It is also designed, you see that little point there? It's made as a glass breaker as well, so you can take this and pop glass with it. My opinion, it's a little bit bulky, but as you can see, it is thick. This piece of metal is not thin. It is definitely built to be thick. And the other purpose that I found actually useful for this, let me go ahead and show you guys, is it acts as a lock, so that no matter what you're doing with this knife, there's no way this knife is going to come out of your hand. You've got the grip of the handle itself, that rubberized grip with really nice texturing on it. But you also have this thing that literally just locks your hand onto the handle. There's no way this thing's going to come out of your hand. Which I kind of like. I actually like that. I know a lot of people say this thing gets in the way. But in my opinion, you have plenty of handle up here that you don't have to get anywhere near that. And if you, for some reason, ended up slipping with this, like you hit a knot or something like that, and that handle caught, your hand is only going to go down to there. There's no way that it can go anywhere past that. Which I really like about this knife. It almost makes having a lanyard on it useless, because you really don't need it. As far as locking your hand onto a knife, the only knife that I've found that's better than that is the BK7's handle, because it's designed in much the same way, with that sharp hookup at the end of the handle to make sure your hand doesn't come off. So as far as this thing goes, I actually do find a use for it other than its intended purposes. I'm not going to be smashing glass with this, and I'm not going to be attaching it to carabiners and stuff like that, because I don't do stuff like that with my knives. But as far as a stopper to keep your hand from coming off, it is quite useful. And I have hit knots with this thing before where my hand has slid down and I've hit that end there because it was raining and stuff like that. And I've hit that end and my hand has not been able to come off of it. And I really do enjoy that about this particular feature. Moving on. Now we're going to get to the complicated portion of this knife. Let me move up a little bit so you guys can see. This thing right here is the ferro rod. It functions as both a lock and a ferro rod. So let me show you guys how it works. You push up on it like this. As you can see, it pops up. So right there is locked down, pops up. Okay, at this point, this piece is unlocked. And there is another feature of this piece which you cannot find unless you unlock it. And that is the gut hook. Now, gut hooks are pretty much hunting only. You're only going to use a gut hook when you're hunting. You're only going to use a gut hook, at least in my experience, the only time I ever use a gut hook is when I catch larger game, things like boar, deer, things of that nature. It is not something that I use on small game, squirrels, anything like that. I find it to be more cumbersome than beneficial. But it does have a gut hook on it. And the gut hook is done quite well. It has a nice wedge shape in there, and it is quite sharp. I'm gonna try to see if I can get, I don't know how well you guys can see it, but you can't really see the edge very well. It is very sharp. Again, right out of the box, I have not touched it up. But in a survival knife, I can see the purpose of a gut hook in a survival knife, because someone who isn't used to hunting may actually find that useful as far as opening up larger game goes, because they aren't as skilled. But as most hunters know, you don't need a gut hook at all, and I will show you why. Basically, when you are skinning a deer or anything else of that nature, you hold a knife like this with the tip, let's see if I can show it to you, tip covered by your finger right here. That prevents the tip from being able to pierce the abdominal wall. At that point, you make your slit, take your finger like this, push it up into the slit, and just run it right up like a zipper. So experienced hunters know you don't need a gut hook. But seeing as how this is a survival style knife, and its intended purpose is for people that may not have those skills, the gut hook is beneficial. So it's one of those leave it or take it things, in my opinion. It's there. I probably will never use it, but it's there. More often than not, I just consider this gut hook to simply be the handle, to simply be kind of the handle portion of this piece. I don't consider it to be an actual item that I'm going to use. Now for the final feature, and that is, if you want to get the ferro rod out, there is a trick to it. It's like a Chinese or a Japanese or Chinese wire puzzle, whatever you want to call it. And that is, you have to hold this piece up, not pressed up, but just hold it up, and then you run this until it pops out. And now you have a ferro rod. And this ferro rod actually works quite well. I was a little bit surprised. To keep this piece here, at this point, the piece can come out completely. So if you do want to take this out, just remember, if you do take it out, the ferro rod will fall out. So you kind of got to leave it in. Some people try to take it out and just leave it out, and then the ferro rod disappears. You have to leave this in if you want to have the ferro rod. If you don't want to have the ferro rod, then feel free to take it out. But let's go ahead and put this back in so I don't drop it and lose it, because I would do something like that. So there we go, but that's back in. Here's your ferro rod. Now again, this knife itself has a 90-degree spine, so you can use the knife to strike the ferro rod. So let's go ahead and take off some of that metal there, or that paint. And as you can see, now I know you guys can't see the globs of metal hitting the floor, but this is an actual soft ferro rod, which I really like, because it means it's actually useful. Most of you guys know that ferro rods like this, survival type ferro rods, tend to be a hard ferro rod. Maybe if you're lucky you'll get a medium, but this one here is actually a soft, noticeably a soft. If you guys haven't seen, you can see those globs of metal just burning away and bouncing off of things. So this is definitively a soft ferro rod. And I will take a piece of fat wood and I will actually show you that in just a second. But the ferro rod itself is definitely a good quality ferro rod. It does have a little bit of a handle with that piece at the end there, so you can use the entire length of the rod. I haven't had a problem with that. It's about 1.5 inches long, so it is definitely a survival rod. It is not something that you're going to want to rely on, because as a soft ferro rod and only being this size, you're only going to get so many strikes. But I don't know if they actually sell replacements or not, but I'm sure you can contact Opinel. They have fantastic customer service. I'm sure if you need a replacement, you can contact them and they'll be able to get you one. But as far as ferro rods go, I was actually impressed with this one. I wasn't expecting much, but I was actually quite happy with the results on this particular ferro rod. Now, let me go ahead, before I get into the whole fire making portion of this video, let me use what little time I have left with the sun to tell you guys what I will be using this knife for, what I personally have found a use for it. And that is, I used to use the Opinel number 15 as my food knife in my bug out bag, and also when I went out camping. It was one of those crossover items that I would pull out of the bag, stick in my camping pack when I left. I really liked Opinel, still like Opinel for those kinds of things, kind of like a camping steak knife. They tend to be very light, they tend to take up not a whole lot of room, and they function very, very well for that purpose. This is going to be my new bug out knife. I will not be taking this camping with me. Instead, I'm going to leave it in my bug out bag because it gives me a redundant whistle that actually does work, and it gives me a nice, durable food prepping knife for skinning deer, for prepping small animals, for doing things like that. I have managed to fillet a fish with this knife. It isn't as good as the number 15 because it doesn't have the flex in it, but it works still quite well. So, you know, I'm not too concerned with it about my ability to actually skin a fish, or not skin a fish, but prepare and process a fish. So I really like that knife for that purpose. That's what I'm going to be using it for, as kind of my bug out food processing knife, because as I have said before in many of my videos, I do not use my camp knife as a food knife, and I highly recommend you guys don't either, because camping knives come in contact with contaminated material all the time. And when I say contaminated, I mean you could be out chopping down vines and stuff for cordage and accidentally rub that knife against poison sumac, poison oak, poison ivy, whatever you want to call it. You can accidentally get that on your blade. And if you were to take that blade and then cut yourself some food with it, you know, say you managed to catch a deer and you use this to cut off a piece of deer steak, you now have that oil on the meat. And when you eat it, it's going to make your life really bad. Not a particularly pleasant feeling. So I never use a bushcrafting knife or a camp knife or any knife that's coming in contact with oils or wood or anything that could potentially be toxic for my food. I always carry a dedicated food knife, and that's what this is going to be in my bug out bag, a dedicated food knife for processing game and preparing my meals. So that's what this purpose is. Now we will go ahead and get to the fire portion of this video, and I'll show you guys just how well this thing makes a fire. But first, let me go ahead and show you guys how well it actually handles wood really quickly. Again, I'm not going to be using it for handling wood, but you guys might. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how that works. Now I'm going to try to get it in a way that you guys can see. But if you guys can see, it cuts through this stuff like butter. Now this is just a piece of fat wood. Nothing particularly fancy about it. You guys can see it's like no resistance. It just goes right through there like butter. And to top it off, the squared spine on this thing is sharp enough that you can get a lot of shavings. Now, that's just what I showed you guys, but there were plenty of other shavings falling off. So, with that in mind, I would say this thing is an awesome fire starting knife. If you guys are just going out on a day hike or something like that, this would be a good general purpose survival knife for you. It's got the ferro rod, it's got the whistle for emergency contact, it has the squared off spine and very sharp blade, making it great for fire starting, and the brightly colored handle and loop here so that you won't lose it. So overall, for a general day hike kind of survival knife, this will work. However, keep in mind, you cannot baton with this knife. Don't try it because you'll break it. You also cannot chop with this knife. While it does chop to a minimal degree, I would not try to chop anything bigger than my thumb. So you're not going to chop down a knife with this, or you're not going to chop down a tree with this knife. Just keep that in mind. If you are skilled enough with a knife to be able to cut wood and things like that without chopping on it, then this may work for you for longer term survival. But I would call this a day hike, 2-day hike kind of survival item. It is not going to be durable enough to last too much past that point. But let me go ahead, get to the concrete over there so that I can show you guys how I'm going to start a fire with this. I will be right back. Alright, so we're back. I have my little pile here. Basically I did I just cut off some feathers from a piece of fat wood and scraped it, so I have my nice little fluff here. I have my ferro rod from the knife itself and the knife. And basically what you're going to do is you're just going to take and kind of set this down into the fluff there. And you're going to scrape it back and forth. And voila, fire. And as you can see, I didn't spend my whole time trying to scrape the entire ferro rod away. So you can get quite a few fires going out of this. This is getting a little bit hot now. But you can scrape quite a few. Let me show you guys my face. There we go. Let's get away from that fire, shall we? Alright, let's zoom this thing up and I'll give you guys my final thoughts here. Zoom. Whoop, wrong way. There we go. Hello. There you go. Now, keep something in mind here. And for you guys who think that's not a pot plant, I know it looks like it on video, but it's actually a pepper plant. As you guys can see, it did start a fire fairly quickly, without too much effort. So as far as survival knives go, in my opinion, this is actually one of the better survival fire starting knives that I've actually used, where it comes with all of the components, if you will. I'd never found the Gerber one to be particularly useful. Even the Lestrade one was better than the Gerber, but it was still gimmicky. It started a fire, but not as well with the materials they gave you. This one is actually one of the fastest survival fire starting knife that I have used, where it's actually designed to be a survival knife with all of the components built in. But there you go. I think that should be a pretty complete review for you guys to let you guys know. Again, I'm not going to tell you if it's worth buying or not, because it is 50 bucks, and whether it is worth it or not is going to be up to you. There are a lot of things that I like about the knife, which is why I like it and I'm going to keep it, but you guys may not find it as useful, so it's going to be up to you guys. Like I said, I do believe they make one without this piece right here, which just has the whistle. Doesn't have the ferro rod, doesn't have this metal piece in it. It just has the survival whistle. I will try to find that one and put an Amazon affiliate link to it as well. But in my opinion, it is definitely worth it. In my opinion, for me, it was worth getting the complete version, just because I do like this and how well it holds onto my hand when I'm using it for carving. Because you do hit knots, and anyone who does a lot of carving knows that when you hit that knot, some of them can be really hard, and if you're just kind of mindlessly going, you can hit that knot, and before you know it, the knife just comes out of your hand. And this knife will not let that happen because this piece right here. So there is a use for it. I'm sure that's not its intended use, but that's why I like it. So I'm going to keep it. But you guys will have to make your own decision on that. So there you go. There's the review. Have a good one. And as always, if you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe. Bye-bye.